Adam Morrison here. When it comes to top-tier contracting, my go-to choice is McGillivray Environmental. They're not just any contractor, they're the best in Spokane and North Idaho. With years of experience, they handle it all. New construction, meticulous repairs, and asphalt overlays. From start to finish, they ensure your project is completed with the highest quality end results. And here's the scoop for this year. McGillivray Environmental has expanded its services to include asphalt paving. That means top-notch commercial parking lots, residential driveways, and road construction. So, ready to kickstart your project? Reach out to Kip at McGillivray Environmental by calling 208-556-6384 for your free estimate. Don't forget to mention my name, Adam from the Perimeter, and experience the difference that McGillivray Environmental brings to the table. Again, that's 208-556-6384, McGillivray Environmental. My number one choice for all my contracting needs.
HDG Architecture is proud to be a sponsor of The Perimeter with Adam Morrison. There is another podcast that you all should be listening to, and it's called If Not Now, When? This podcast, which Josh Hassong of HDG Architecture hosts, has a clear mission to ignite positive change within the Spokane community. On the podcast, Josh brings together diverse individuals from city officials, business owners, journalists, influencers, and big thinkers to have meaningful conversations about what we can do to help transform downtown Spokane into an even more vibrant and robust community. By talking to these movers and shakers, the podcast aims to inspire and empower its listeners by actively shaping their city's future. You can find the If Not Now When podcast wherever you are listening to The Perimeter at, or you can find it in the description of this episode.
Welcome to The Perimeter, Episode 3, Season 3, presented by McGillivray Environmental. I got my partner on the radio, my good friend Tom Hudson, giving us a preseason kind of preview on how we feel about it. It's always good to see you, Huddy.
You too, Mo. Great to see you. Great to be here. It's crazy. It's starting again.
I know.
It's kind of funny how we missed our summer opportunity this year, right?
I know.
It's like how fast it goes. Usually get a little lake time and hang out and enjoy the boat, enjoy your hospitality. But man, it's crazy. It's already here.
We got a lot of beer drinking to make up for.
Yeah, we do.
That's what Huddy's trying to say.
That's the truth
to the audience listening. It's like, hey, I missed out getting drunk with you on the dock. Yes, I agree, Huddy. Let's do it. Let's do it on the road.
Yep,
but yeah, we missed out on it.
Honolulu.
Everybody's got the kid situation.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? We all love it, but also you start looking at the schedule and you're like, holy crap, it's going to be September before anybody has time off. And then it's like, well, school started, so I can't come out to the lake. And then it gets, but that
gets pulled in.
Yes, exactly. Like everything starts to shut down. But good season last year. We talked about it a lot on air, when they were 15-5 and they lost to LMU at home, everybody lost their minds. And you and I always laugh about it. And we get it because we appreciated that there's a fan base that cares, because in college basketball that is slowly dwindling around especially the smaller universities that don't have power football. Like it's just not a dying sport, but the interest level is not as what it used to be with social media, but whatever. What do you think going into this season people's expectations should be? Yes, we got picked second, 11, 12 in the AP and the coaches poll. But like based off last year, we go to the Elite Eight and we end up losing to Buzzsaw, who ends up winning the national championship against UConn. What do you think people's expectations would be with literally 10 new guys that could potentially play rotational minutes?
Well, real quick, Mo, it's funny, isn't it? Because you laugh about how hard this is. You talk about, we're 15-5 and you and I mean, you see it and you're living it and really close to it.
Yeah.
And just understand how hard it is, right? We ran into that buzzsaw in the Elite Eight.
Mm-hmm.
If Alex Dukas doesn't go down with that back injury for St. Mary's. I mean, St. Mary's is beating Connecticut in the second round.
Yeah.
So, it's hard, right? Because, I mean, if St. Mary's, and we know how they play and what they do, if they're able to close the deal and they win that game, nobody's talking about how great UConn is, right? But they escaped that thing. And then, like you said, then became a buzzsaw. So it is hard, right? I mean, you get to 15, you're going to lose some games every once in a while.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the thing that you're going to have to look at this year a little bit, right? Just from a continuity standpoint. I mean, I think the coaches did a great job of building a roster.
Yeah.
I mean, how crazy is it in this day and age, right? I mean,
it's going to be like this every year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a program
it really is.
Wins 31 games, goes to the Elite Eight, like you said, for the 5th time in 8 years, and you're turning over 8 players.
Yeah.
Right.
It's crazy.
And, and a couple of them graduate, and then the rest of it is transfer portal and all that movement. So, I mean, I think it is. It's going to be, like you said, that it's going to be kind of the normal thing, which is going to mean now, hey, Ryan Nembhard, great sign, right? Graham Ike, great sign. I mean, you love that you got those guys, but they haven't played together.
Yeah.
Right. And they haven't played with Anton or Nolan.
He's played 1 season in 4 years, but continues.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. No, you're right. So to expect that this team's going to come together and be, really good. And especially, I mean, let's not forget, it's only happened a few times for as many great players as we've had come through the program. It's only happened a couple times where you're replacing somebody like Drew or somebody like you, right? Where it was like, okay, hey, look, like this guy, we can go throw it to this guy and he's going to go get us,
20
whatever.
a night at least. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And get the ball to him. Because we don't know who that's going to be this year, right? Who are we going to? Not necessarily, I don't know that anybody's going to score 20 a game. My point being, games on the line, who we throwing it to? You don't know that yet.
Yeah.
And that may pop up against Purdue or Tennessee or somebody in Maui. And so, you may lose a few of those games early on while you're trying to figure out what your identity is, and I go back, was it the first team that went to the championship game, in 2017 when we beat Arizona down in LA, you just didn't really know. And that was, I thought, a big moment for the team because, it was Nigel who hit that little jumper on the baseline that helped us win the game kind of late. And you're like, okay, that's the guy that's going to be our leader and it's going to happen, right?
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
I think there's going to be some of that, just trying to figure out, the new players and then the new roles, right? With Nolan moving over to the two or the 1.5, like whatever we're going to call it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, him moving over to the 2, I know he played well the other day. Anton, what's his role? I think Anton will continue to do the things that he has always done. But for people that are expecting that all of a sudden Anton's going to be the guy that you're throwing into and you're going to post him up and he's going to score 18 or 20, I don't know is realistic, right?
Yeah.
So, I think it's going to be interesting just trying to get together, like you said, every year, just like how do we understand what these teams are going to be, early on in the season?
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating because in the last 4 years, obviously Drew played 4 years, but 3 mainly, we don't have like a for sure scorer. Drew Timme ends up breaking the all-time record. So, throw it to him, playoff double team packages. He was a good passer, split action, all that stuff. We can't do that anymore. Everybody keeps telling me Graham Ike can be that guy, but he hasn't played. He's played 1 season in 4 years and he played at Wyoming. They went to the tournament that year, but then he sat out last year and then he's been hurt. So availability is going to be a question for him. Ryan Nembhard was fantastic at Creighton, but if you look at his numbers last year, it was like 13 a game. Great. But now you're going to get to 20, you know what I'm saying? And then Steele Venters, Big Sky Player of the Year, average 15, but this isn't Eastern. Nothing against that program, or it's just Big Sky. That's what I'm saying. And so it's really a fascinating season walking into it with legitimate questions. Sometimes, you and I, when we do our broadcast and there's new seasons, our questions are, who's going to be the 4th option?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Who's going to be the 8th guy? And then it'll turn into 7. And we always say 7.5 rotation. Who's going to be? Now it's like, who's starting? There's 2 spots, I think, and we'll get into that later. And then like, are we going to have a bunch of guys that average like 9 to 8, 15? And it's like 15 can be the top half. You know what I'm saying? And then where does like the returners, like Anton, I think had his best season by far last year. But I think a lot of that has to do, you got to play off Drew. And that's not a knock on him, but he's a perfect glue score in weird spots. You know what I'm saying? But now to, like you said, ask him to back down and do all that stuff. It's not really his game. His game is slashing, cutting, swing, wide open shots, push a guy in the back, get an offensive rebound, get a steal, run out. And then you look down and you go, wow, he had 12 and 8 and 6. Like, and if you're on a team, like, wow, we're going to win a lot of games with a kid like that. But like, hey, go get 18 and 19. He's never been like that. Even like prep, he never had that. He scored, but he never had that, like, just throw it to, you know what I'm saying? So it is fascinating just going into this season because there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And it's funny you talk about Steele, and I didn't mention him, and I should have. I mean, obviously you're excited about him coming in, but I think we looked at even, at Craziness in the Kennel. Now it's a scrimmage and it's whatever.
Yeah.
But hey, there's 6,000 people there and screaming and yelling, and you feel the nerves and the stuff. And Steele didn't knock down a ton of shots. Well, it doesn't mean he can't, but it's just trying to figure out.
Here's my thing with him. I think I said this on the first episode. Is his productivity going to be strictly measured on making shots? Mm-hmm. And that's a hard position to be in as a player because, Dusty Stromer is going to have an opportunity as a high-level recruit to play those minutes.
Yep.
So if you're Steele and if you're not going 3 for 4 or 3 for 5, and then you only get 2 rebounds, right? You know what I'm saying? So that's my issue with that position. Not that he can't play, but is it strictly based, all right, you're a swing guy, you better knock down wide open shots. That can be difficult to do because if you're the counter to that is if you're at Eastern and let's say you're a floor spacer like he was, but you ain't coming out if you miss.
Right.
That's the difference.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get at is like those shots get a little bit more tighter when there's a guy that high level recruit and blah, blah, blah. Or it's not even Dusty Stromer. It's like, well, we'll just move over somebody else, what I'm saying?
We'll throw Anton in there and bring Ben in off the bench, right?
Ben Gregg and then Braden Huff and, those guys can play. We'll play big and then whatever. So
the perimeter will be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Greens. How's everything going today?
Hey, Robert. We're good. Just checking in on that car loan we applied for.
No worries. Let me pull that up. Yep. Looks like you're approved and all set.
Hey, that's great news.
So, you headed over to the dealership now?
Yep. Just gotta make one stop first.
And we got a great rate, too.
Moving on to the next topic, closed door scrimmage. I saw the box score. Somebody, I don't know, somebody got it and put it on online. I was like, cool, man. Nolan had a good game.
Yep.
Who else had a good game? Anton played good.
Well.
Yes.
I think 5 or 6 guys got to double figures.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It was interesting, right? Now, I mean, obviously, you always want to win those things, right? And we always joke about the reaction, overreaction, depending on if you win or not. I think what we have to remember is I think Anton had 8 fouls. Right, so they're not fouling guys out. Yeah,
tournament
exactly.
Rules.
Right.
Yeah, whatever. We only have 6 guys. We can't foul out.
So I think in some regards you have to look at that and say, okay, I mean it's
So
a little
weird
different than a game. Yeah, drinking water
out of a fucking monster can. What the fuck is this? All right, sorry. Continue.
No, you're fine. It is kind of funny. I was waiting
for the bite.
That.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the bite. Like what the hell? Anyway, keep going.
No, but I do think obviously you're excited that you went in and competed, and some of those guys played well. I mean, I think if you're looking at bright spots, I mean, obviously Anton filling the stat sheet because we just talked about it. I mean, that's what you're going to want to see.
Yep.
Nolan knocking down some shots and scoring it. I mean, I think you have to be really excited about that. I think Nolan has a chance, and I'm excited for him. I'm sure you are
Same
too,
here.
right? I mean,
so am I.
Playing,
I think it's just going to be like with Perk and Nigel.
Yep.
And I think it's going to alleviate a lot of pressure for him as to be the primary ball handler. Not that he was bad at it, but just the pressure of being the point guard at Gonzaga.
Yep.
And I think I think he's more of a scoring kid anyway. That's kind of his deal.
Yep.
So I think playing off the ball, and he has a really good looking stroke, and now I think he'll get more rhythm shots.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for him.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And I think Ryan looks like played pretty well.
Yeah.
Had some turnovers. I mean, I think it's one of those deals exactly, right? That I think obviously you're excited that you went in there and competed. I mean, if we were talking about, oh my gosh, we lost by 40,
yeah, no, exactly. No,
Katie
it's
barred
true.
the door, what the heck? But
yeah.
The fact that you played a good program and some guys got minutes and were productive. I mean, I think, like I said, you look at that box score, is that going to be indicative of kind of where the rotation is? Because I think you do get to a point we talk about, we have all these new guys and you have, is this guy, like you said, we're going to talk about who's going to play and who's going to start. Mm-hmm. Well, at some point you have to start to whittle that thing down, right? And it looks like maybe, it's maybe started looking at those minutes a little bit. The coaches are really trying to get a look at how you do that because we talk about this all the time. Depth is great, but realistically, you're not playing 12.
No,
and
never.
Knock on wood, the injury thing is where depth hurt or helps you more than maybe thinking. Because, people are like, oh, this guy could play. He could be in the NBA. He could. It's like, well, but at the end of the day, the coach is, like you said, he's going to play 7.5. So it looked like numbers wise, maybe some of that stuff kind of is maybe starting to shake itself out.
Yeah, no, I mean, I obviously, like I said, I didn't watch it. I couldn't watch it. And you went to the deal last year, the pay-per-view deal. That was kind of an odd
that was
spectacle.
Yes.
Good for them, but it was just watching it on TV. I was like, this is kind of odd.
Yeah.
Good job, Huddy.
Yeah, right.
This is like, bravo.
Okay, yep.
All right,
and then all the exactly. And then all of the crazy and then all the crazy panic of, oh my gosh, like we got boat raced, this team's gonna be terrible. And then ended up 31 wins.
Well, yeah, so takeaways, just looking at the box score, and obviously the win, we're gonna be fine with the new faces, but it is funny, like you said, there was only like 7 guys that played a majority of the minutes, and then some of them you're like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So that's not obviously indicative, but usually coaches kind of have a pretty firm idea on who's going to play.
Yeah.
And it's not just, without cause is what I'm trying to say. Like there's reasons for it. So it'd be interesting as we continue, but I think playing a high level program like that and getting quote unquote a win is got to make you feel good, and just kind of, get everybody ready for, the season starting Friday. We play Lewis and Clark State exhibition game, but then we play, was it 3 days later, play Yale?
We play Yale a week later. So I think the 10th
later.
is when we open.
The 10th. All right. Next topic. And this is like probably the big one. And I think a lot of people want to get your take and my take on it. And you already know what I'm talking about, is the Big 12 move. And let's just preface this real quick. Me and Huddy have talked about this probably for 2 years, sober and not sober, many times, because it is fascinating, because the variation in your viewpoint for me changes, not week to week, but like half a year to half a year, because you're like, something new will come up, or this is in the midst of all the conference realignment, then you start going, well, shoot, I don't know, we don't want to be left out in the cold. So just to give the audience, if they're not familiar, Gonzaga would be a basketball-only invite to the Big 12. Colorado, Arizona just joined recently. Didn't Arizona State as well?
State,
Utah.
Yep.
It was graded out the best basketball conference last year, and that wasn't even like debated. It wasn't even like a Ken Palm thing. It was like, yeah, that's the best basketball conference. I mean, like TCU finished 9-9 last year and was like an 8, like a really good 8 seed. You know what I'm saying? Like,
really good team.
I've switched my position, and I want to hear yours first. But I think it's really fascinating that it would be a basketball only move, and just to give my personal deal, obviously I've talked about it a little bit. My daughter plays hoops. The girls' side would stay in the WCC. So like it's just men's basketball only. I think it's fascinating. I want to hear your thoughts on it.
It is fascinating, Mo, and it's funny you talk about it changing back and forth. And in all of our types of conversations, I've been very adamant about, I think the WCC is the best place for us to be. From a standpoint, if you look at the universities, you look at kind of the like-minded places. The travel schedule is a lot easier than going to the Big 12. I think that the notion that we can't play for a national championship has been debunked since we've done it twice. So you can do it from where we are.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the Pac-12 thing happens, right? And you're just like, okay, everything's fine, and then boom, it just blows up.
Yeah.
And you see how quickly things can change, and that talk, because I've always understood it, right? Like when you and I have these conversations, and we talk to people in our administration stuff, we're not ignorant to the point that there's a money consideration going into the bigger conference. There's some things that come with it, and I have always understood that, and I know that's a very valid conversation. I mean, if you can get $12 or $15 million compared to $5 million, sure. I mean, there's an enticing part of that deal. I get that. I still kind of felt like, hey, the WCC, because the league is getting better. When we look at, facilities, Pepperdine's building the place. San Francisco is just wrapping up their practice facility. There's a lot of stuff going on in the league.
We had a 3-bid league 2 years ago, right? 2 years ago, and it's been a multi-bid league probably for 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, keep
no,
going.
absolutely. Yeah. But now when you look at how quickly that thing with the Pac-12 happened, and obviously it's turned into this thing where, I mean, hey, like we're all together, like let's go. And then as soon as somebody gets a call, it's like, all right, I'll see you guys later. I'm out.
Hey, we have an Apple deal, and then literally 6 hours later, like, see ya.
Yeah.
Via text.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. Like,
we're not together anymore.
Turn off your notifications, right?
Block.
Exactly.
All right, I'm clear, man. I did it.
Right. And so that's right. That's the scary thing. And that's what we've talked about time and time again about being worried about being left out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I've always felt like our brand is strong enough now that if there was a real huge turn, that somebody would still eventually say, hey, Gonzaga is a good, is a good look. But when you look at it now and you take the Pac-12 out of the equation, I thought the Pac-12 screwed up from a standpoint of not even looking at us and trying to solidify it, right?
Yeah.
Like I kind of felt like if we were going to move the Pac-12 and make more sense than the Big 12.
Yes. When it was alive.
Yes, when it was alive. Exactly. 100%. Not now. Not now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's right. It's a complete mess. But I think that the Pac-12 obviously overestimated their value. I mean,
oh God,
you're the Power Five. They were number 5, and to go in and the reports you heard is somebody said the offer was $28 million a year per school. And somebody came back and said, give us 50. And then
double.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, basically.
And they didn't even, and that's the thing, right? Is now you've got business people who are like, yeah, no. Yeah. Okay, we'll see you later. And then so, well, wait, can we? No, actually, we're done.
Yeah, you should have said 35.
Yeah, you should have said exactly. And
all right, we got to 31, and then
exactly we
both felt good, right?
Yeah. But that's kind of my deal is to see how quickly that thing blew up, and obviously how quickly people
were
looking at their stuff. Exactly. So if all of a sudden, all those the Power Fives get together, like, all right, we're just leaving everybody else behind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you do? And I do understand that. I just, I was just talking to some people, and the thing, you and I have talked about this a lot. What we're going to have to understand is that, the reality is going to be there are going to be years we're going to be like TCU, and you'd have a good team, and you're going to be 9-9.
Yep.
There are going to be years where you have a fantastic team that still loses 5 or 6 games because you're going to Kansas, and you're going to Fort Worth, and you're going to Lubbock. Hey, you're going to Ames, Iowa on a Thursday night, right? You're playing against an Iowa State team that's going to have some players, right? Once every other year, presumably, if you're doing it, you're going to go to West Virginia and have to play out there, right?
And then UCF or whoever the hell is in it now or whatever.
And that's the thing.
South Florida, whoever's in it.
Yeah, UCF. And what's funny? You kind of wonder too, Mo, getting off topic a little bit, but no disrespect to those 4 schools they brought in, but it was Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Big 12, you're probably looking at it now and thinking we would have taken Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah if it would have been available and not taken those other schools. Yeah. I know there's talk about,
I think the BYU,
we want to be in every time zone or whatever. But,
that's a real thing. And just for the listener, sorry to cut you off, Huddy.
No, you're good.
Like, what's great about our conversations, and then like traveling on the road, we got to have conversations with people inside the building that make the real decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And we're friends. They trust us that we would never say stuff that's not allowed to say. So we have real conversations. Mm-hmm. But like, I had never really thought that it's such an advantage on college football Saturday that you have a game in the Eastern, Pacific, Central, Mountain time zone, and then you're on all day, and you're like, oh, then that's when the light bulb kind of went off for me.
Right.
When the Big Ten added UCLA and USC, and that was brought up, I was like, oh, now it makes sense, because like the SEC dominates, but they're like, if you're on the West Coast, the games are done at 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing because then everybody switches the channel and goes, oh, the Big Ten's on. Oh, I'd rather wait and watch that or whatever.
Right.
So that's part of the value add for the Big 12, bringing those schools in. Obviously, basketball-wise, bringing Arizona is a huge get. I think Colorado is always solid, aren't they? Like NIT, range.
Okay.
Shout out to Bill Greer.
Yep.
And then, but like it's such a weird decision for Gonzaga to get away from the Jesuit stuff, the like-minded universities. We don't have football, so what? When you're holding your hat out and go, pay us, what are you really worth?
Right.
And if you're the other schools, what are you willing to give up? But also, there is value in having a dominant basketball, the predominant basketball conference, because you're going to get all the attention, even though it's smaller than it used to be. You're going to get all the attention for basketball during that year, and that's still a chunk of that pie.
Yeah.
Live content is, as you know, is paramount.
Huge,
it's huge. It's like the last thing that's besides streaming.
Advertising, right? Yes, sports is about it.
That's about it.
Right.
Exactly. Nobody watches sitcoms anymore and blah blah blah. It's like all streaming
through it, right? Or you stream,
Mm-hmm. So like live content still has a huge value, and you got to put stuff on television. So I'm for it now because I understand, or I've been educated on the dollars and cents of it.
Right.
I don't like the fact that there might be a season that we go 10-8 and we still are a good team, and I don't like it that, not that we're losing games, that people are going to complain and
right.
This is ridiculous. See, I told you. And it's like, dude, we've gone to 5 Elite Eights in the last 8 years, 8 straight Sweet 16s, 2 national championship games in 6 years.
Yeah.
We can win in March. So that's not the problem. It's like, well, when you play in the WCC, it's like, that's such a fault. I don't get where that comes from.
Yeah.
But also, like, it's fun going 30-6 every year, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
No, I know.
So it's such a double-edged sword. But on the backside, like, if you're getting $28 million a year, just say $20 million a year for basketball, you can fund golf, women's tennis. I mean, just everything.
Yeah. Well, and isn't it funny?
So much more sense.
And the funny thing for me is, there are two things about it. I think that's been something that when you look at like the Big 12 and the schools that all have football, they're like, well, hey, wait a second. Like, what do we, like, I think that's been a little bit of the holdup. And you've got Brett Yormark, who is a business person, not a college athletics person, but a business person who's the commissioner of the Big 12. And he wants to build this thing out where it's like, hey, basketball has value on its own. He's like, all of these TV contracts have been built around football. Yeah. And his thing is, let's separate basketball and let's make it something. And that's how he, I think, is trying to get everyone to come to an agreement of, we can pay Gonzaga X because it's part of this package versus, because you don't understand. Yeah. If you have a football program, like, why would we bring them in and give them $20 million a year if all it is basketball, and so
20 conference games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's probably one of the things that's going on. And it sounds like the stuff that at least I've read a little bit is people are starting to shift a little bit to that thought of, okay, if we can kind of separate the basketball thing, there's going to be a value that'll make sense. But, the other thing that's interesting to me, Mo, and this is where, like, you talk about kind of changing your mindset. It might be one of the few entities where everybody gets paid equally. So you talk about being able to fund all your other programs to get your stuff. Look at Vanderbilt in the SEC.
I know,
right? Look at take your pick. I mean, we could hit every bottom feeder in in all these conferences. They get the same amount of money as Alabama does, right? For at least from the TV contract. Now I know some of the NCAA stuff and
the units
and the football
will change,
stuff,
but yes,
but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's a very interesting spot to be in because we're programmed to believe if you're winning and you're successful, you are going to make more, right? But when you look at these TV deals, everybody's getting an equal chunk of the pie, at least to start.
Yeah.
And so, if you're the one making the decision, you say, well, I can fund everything. Yeah, we may struggle a little bit, but I'm still getting paid.
Yep.
That's
it's a real
thing. It is.
That's the biggest conundrum. And people listening, like, I will wholeheartedly say it's not because of greed. So when you hear that, like, oh, these greedy commissioners, is like, no, dude. Like, for example, UCLA was the story I read when they went to the Big Ten, UCLA and USC together, was it 2 years ago? They announced it. They were $90 million in debt in the athletic department. This is like one of the best schools on the West Coast, biggest market, really good at basketball, really good at football. I think they probably win men's golf and shit,
right.
Pac-12, the Conference of Champions, but they probably win swimming, like all that crap. Right. And they're like $90 million in debt. And they were looking at the Pac-12 like, dude, we're in the second biggest market on the planet, behind New York, and we can barely pay our bills. So, like, it's not greed. It's we got to fund these other sports, and they should be funded. Obviously, Title IX, but just giving kids another opportunity to get a scholarship in these sports or Olympic sports and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Wholeheartedly believe in that. They work just as hard, but 100%.
Yeah. Well, and
it's dollars and cents, man.
Right.
It really
is.
The
one thing to that I think is interesting is, do you at some point here come up with a different model for some of the Olympic sports?
Yeah. That's a good point.
Because, with $90 million to fund our, be $90 million in debt. Like, do we have to take a step back and look at, at what we're doing and say, well, wait a second, maybe instead of, and we talk about all these, that's been the big debate, right? Is so the UCLA golf team in March is going to get on a plane and fly out to New Jersey to play in a Rutgers tournament.
Or should they?
And no, exactly. So are you able to maybe
it's so easy to counter and go, well, the basketball team gets to play there.
Right. No,
and
exactly.
It's a fair argument.
Yes. Yeah. No, but it is. You're right. You're right.
Economically, it's wrong,
right.
But it is to be like, those kids get that opportunity, you don't.
Right.
Or, and like in today's age, you got to like go,
no, you do. And the
oh my
thing
God,
is, I know, right? And I say this way too much, but like it's almost like for me, it feels like we need to get the adults back in the room a little bit and have them take control versus in those kind of conversations. Because at the end of the day, what are we still? There are 2% of people who play college athletics who go on to play professionally.
Yeah.
Right. So the 98% still need to go to class in theory and get their
degrees
and get their stuff done. Right. And then of that 2%, what's the percentage that makes enough money as professionals that
just
the education's irrelevant?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That it doesn't, you don't need it to go get a job because you need a degree in your field. So that's the thing for me that's also kind of interesting is, okay, great. Well, the golf team should go to Rutgers because the football team's going to Rutgers. Well, okay, now these kids are missing, 4 or 5 days of school. And, so it is. There's so many different layers to this thing, Mo. It's crazy. I mean, imagine 5 years ago us sitting here talking about this.
I know. We'd have been like, why the Big 12?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
they'd be like, Pac-12 makes sense, but, and then we would have had some, a different argument for why to stay in the WCC. But it is fascinating, and I'm curious to see how it unfolds because, like I said, 2 years ago, I was like, why, man, this is dumb. Like the WCC's fine. They've changed some of the, remember when we threatened to go to the Mountain West and they changed the things that needed to be changed, the unit size for the NCAA tournament, and then playing that third game essentially in the West Coast Conference didn't make any sense for anybody. And look at perfect example. Look at Eastern last year, who has the longest win streak in the country. And then they have to play that first round game and go get beat by somebody that's a tough matchup by NAU. And now they're gone, and that story goes away, and they're not you're not getting pressed for your league and blah blah blah. So like Fewy was right on that. It wasn't well, we're scared of it. He's like, no, this game does nothing for us.
No, and you need your best teams in. You need Eastern riding a 22-game win streak,
getting to the NCAA tournament, probably getting like a 13 seed. Then look how good they are. And then the Big Sky, and rightfully so. But they lose in the first round. Oh my God. Then your best player transfers to Gonzaga, and then so like it is fascinating. But I appreciate your thoughts on that because it's gonna change a little bit. Like I said, it's one of those opinions where you hear different information, or you look at it, as you travel, and you're like, well, okay, this kind of makes more sense. And then, like, to be honest, like some of the teams in the West Coast Conference, they are trying to get better. Some of them are not.
Right.
Or don't really care.
Right.
Like they just have a team. And if you really said, you put everybody's hands on the table and threaten to smash their hand with a hammer and go, do you care if you go to Division I or you just be a D3 and you drive a bus and send your teams, to all the small schools in California and Nevada? They'd be like, no, let's do that, man.
Right.
They would.
Yeah.
They'd be like, we get $80,000 a year a student. We're filled, and we have beautiful campuses, and our academics are unbelievable.
Yeah.
So who cares? Let's be Whitworth. Nothing against Whitworth. Beautiful campus, great academics. Division III. Just go drive a bus to wherever. You know what I'm saying? So, and you pay your coach $100,000 instead of $900.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, it is fascinating. All right, shifting gears. I appreciate again your thoughts because I think the people want to kind of hear our thoughts, but we have obviously we don't know everything, but we have like more inside information. But we're also not going to like throw the university under the bus and tell you certain things. So, but it's also like our lenses are a little bit clearer. It's not just greedy people. It's like, no, dude, there's actually like reasons behind it. It's not just excuses or guys trying to line their pockets. You got to fund whole athletic departments. So that's basically what I was trying to get out is money. Okay. All right. We covered this a little bit in the start and the season expectations. Okay. Like I said, we were Elite 8 last year. I think Sweet 16 and further. Now that's not like saying they can't, but I think like we can win 2 games in a weekend like we've done the last 8 seasons.
Yep.
I'm just really curious with all the turnover on the roster and then like the backcourt situation. I think it's going to be great for Nolan, but there's going to be some wiggle room in that. Obviously I've been to one practice and I watched the craziness in the kennel. but I'll be curious to see like how our backcourt plays. And then the health on the backside with Graham EK. Brayden Huff looks great, but he hasn't played yet.
Yep.
Okay, so who knows? And then rim protection for me is something that I'm concerned about. We'll figure out our defensive strategy, obviously, and Fewey's really good at it, and we've evolved in the last 10 years on that, but we have zero rim protection.
Yeah.
And I've asked like people from Wyoming, my cousin plays football there, so I've been down there a few times.
Yep.
And I've talked to their coach and assistants. And I've asked about Graham, and all positive, great things. Love the kid. They were mad that he left, but in a good way. Like, oh, he's great. I'm glad he landed at Gonzaga. Can he rim protect? Not really. So I got my answer, but I was like, I heard he could score. Look at his numbers. Everything was great. They're like, yeah. But then I was like, rim protection. Like, nah, he's kind of a charge guy. And I'm like, that's not good.
That's
not good. So that's my biggest concerns, like kind of roster wise going in, and expectations. Like I said, Sweet 16 are better, and I know that's kind of like a wishy-washy, but I think this team can win 2 games at least in a weekend, and then in the NCAA tournament, it's kind of not a crapshoot, but it's draw. And you talked about it at the start. St. Mary's. If St. Mary's beats UConn, then who knows? What's your thoughts on that?
I'm with you. Like the backcourt is going to be fascinating, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the question's going to be like, I think we've got a chance to be really good there. But so who comes in when someone needs a breather? I mean, you can't have Ryan and Nolan play 40 minutes a game.
I think is that Dusty Schromer,
and it may be Dusty. Maybe a slide Steele over to the 2 for a little bit.
Yeah.
That I think obviously question. I mean, you would assume that Dusty gets some of those minutes.
He's going to have to get some of those minutes. I think right.
And I think the Eastern European kids that they brought in, I know they like, but I don't know that there's a situation where they're coming in and playing.
Yeah.
I
like the Luka.
Me too.
I thought he was good. So anyway,
I did too. I liked him. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, maybe that becomes a necessity. I don't know, but I think that's going to be the big one. Is you love the starting backcourt, but where do you go when when you're looking for a breather? Maybe foul trouble or whatever.
Yep.
I think the 3 is even kind of an interesting position.
That's the biggest one for me. That's the biggest question mark.
Yeah. Because if Steele comes in and plays, and plays well, right, you feel really good. But like you said earlier, I mean, Dusty, you don't recruit these top 50, 25 kids,
sit on the bench
and have them sit on the bench. Right. And it goes deeper. And this is the hard part with recruiting and all that other stuff. If you get to a point where, teams can recruit against you, well, yeah, no, they do. They brought that top 20 kid in and you're a top 20 kid. Right. And well, they didn't play him. Yep. So we're going to play you.
Yeah.
And, and how quickly you get into a young kid's mind. He's like, okay, so I mean, I think Dusty, you're going to have to get him on the floor.
He's got to play 20 minutes a night.
Yeah,
if you're a freshman high level recruit, and just the piggyback off what you just said, like in the recruiting aspect, a lot of these kids are intertwined in EYBL teams and the Nike teams, those circuits. Mm-hmm. So like if you piss off like one of those families, they're gonna talk to the other 6 EYBL teams that try to get them to play with them, and they'll be like, yeah, don't go to Gonzaga, your kid won't play. Like that's a real thing. Yep. And you have to kind of like, you don't bow down to them, but you have to have that in your back pocket.
Right.
Like we can't totally screw over a high level kid like that, because if they really have a bone to pick, those other AU coaches are like, hey, call Dusty's dad and see what he really thinks about it or whatever.
Well, and the hard part of that too is that, this is my frustration with just where we've gone with athletics and just society in general, if we want to get real deep, which is Dusty obviously is an amazing talent to be ranked where he was and to be able to do the things that he does. But there's a difference between being a fantastic high school player and then stepping in at this level and just being ready to contribute right away. Yeah. So maybe, and I'm not saying Dusty in particular, I'm just talking about just in general. We see it every year, right? Well, this kid's a top, 20. He's a 5-star recruit. He's this, he's that. But then you get to the college level, and especially now where you've got, with the COVID stuff, 23, 24-year-olds that are playing. Yeah. And you're going against an 18-year-old who maybe isn't all that strong, who's still trying to kind of figure it out. So now all of a sudden you're not playing a kid because you're trying to develop him. Like you're bringing him along. It's not, okay, we're going to play him 30 minutes a game because we need him to play 30 minutes. You're like, hey, he's good and he's going to be good, but if he's playing 30 minutes a game, we're not going to win a lot of games, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the interesting things to me when you talk about that stuff is, just because you don't play 30 minutes and score 15 points a game as a freshman and you're a top 25 recruit, doesn't mean you're bad.
Or you got screwed over.
Yeah,
exactly.
As a sophomore, you come and you play and you blow up, and all of a sudden you're like, well, I played in college for a year and I'm stronger now. And
that's a good point.
So, but the problem is, to your point, is that nobody wants to sit around and wait for that sophomore year, right? And they've all been conditioned to believe that
especially
they're going to be the 2% who are going to be the ones who become NBA guys, right? Yeah. And nobody in their mind thinks, I mean, you hear stories. I mean, we're on the road and like talking to guys in the WCC and like, oh yeah, no, he thinks he's going to be a pro. And you're like, the kid's averaging 6 points a game for a team that's won 6 games and lost 20.
I know.
Right. So it's, trying to get those kids to understand that it's okay to develop and get better. And let's see what happens versus, your first year right out of the chute, you're going to be a superstar. But no, getting back to Dusty, I think he will play. I think you're right. I mean, and I know they love him. He's competitive as all get out. He can shoot it. So I think he'll find some minutes. And then I also think, like you talk about that front line, which is interesting because over the years, you and I've talked about this a lot. That's where it's kind of a 3.5 man rotation.
Mostly three. Mostly 3, and I love how they run their bigs. And I think that was Tommy who kind of brought the European substitution pattern in. I've done it. It sounds funny as it sounds, but I've done it in AU basketball. You have 3 bigs, you start 2, and then you just kind of rotate them.
Yep.
And they all play like 18 to 22 minutes.
Yep.
And everybody's happy.
Yep.
You have maybe one kid that's more athletic, one's more score, but like you can throw different lineups. You can mismatch the starting. They're going to do the same thing this year.
Right.
But who's still the guy that gets left out?
Right.
That's where you're going to go into. Yes.
Right. Because Anton's playing.
100%. He's earned it.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Graham, if he's healthy, didn't transfer into to be the 4th guy. And I think obviously, I mean, if he gets back to the levels that he was, I mean, I don't care what conference you're playing in. If you go 20-10, right? Yeah. Mountain West is legit.
They made the tournament
that year. I mean,
they were good.
He's productive,
yes.
right? Ben, I mean, shoot,
he earned a starting spot he earned a spot
in the
he beat out Efton, and then he there were stretches where last year's team needed a guy that kind of like dove on the floor and pumped his fist and all that, and he was that guy, and then it slowly built, and then he started making shots and all that stuff. So he's earned that.
And he's put his time in, absolutely, and he has earned it. And then all of a sudden, everybody we talk to says Braden's had the best camp of anybody. Yeah. And I mean, he's Mr. Basketball in the state of Illinois.
Yeah.
Now
and redshirted, so he's like, I'm going to take a year
That's
off.
the mindset,
and get better. And now I get to play.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see how that rotation works out. And like you said, I'm excited to see how Braden plays, to see what his skills bring to that group in that rotation, right? It's like, okay, well, he scored. Like I would guess, just kind of looking at the way he moves a little bit, if you were going to talk rim protection out of those 4 guys, and I'm not saying that he's going to be a great rim protector, but I'm just saying, like from a size standpoint,
he's the longest.
He's legit 6'10",
6'11",
right? And he's probably the longest.
Yeah.
And obviously he can shoot it. I mean, that's
he's pick and pop.
He's pick and pop.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see that rotation and how they do it. Because like I said, it's been, I mean, 3 for years, right?
Yeah, 8 years at least, right? Yeah. Since Shimmy and probably right before then with J3, Shimmy, and RC or BC and Rui. It's always been like 3 bigs, Zebo. You just go down the line. Like they've always had 3 bigs, and it's perfect because then you don't have to worry about foul trouble as much. You usually have your main guy and the other 2, but it's an easy substitution pattern. I think it's the right way to sub in high level basketball. But you're right. There's 4, and there's 4 that, completely deserve a shot to play a ton of minutes. Yep. And then, with the transfer portal, like if you're Braden Huff and let's say you have a great camp and then somehow you just don't work yourself in the rotation, like I'm out of here. I redshirted, you know what I'm saying? Like I can't wait another year.
Right.
Peace.
Right.
That the counter to that would be like, well, Anton's leaving for sure. And maybe Graham does, but you always have that worry as a staff. Yeah,
for sure. And that's the thing. And I will give, Ben a lot of credit because we talk about those things kind of going on, right? So if you're Ben and we sign Graham, And then Anton decides to come back. And so all of a sudden you're looking like, okay, well, wait, by this point, I put on my time. Like I should be up for a starting job. He's a junior, right? Yeah. You know, and for him to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to stay here and I'm going to play. I think that's great. I think more kids should do that. And so like you said, because, you know, you don't play and then everybody holds it against you, you know, or holds it against the team. And all of a sudden you're transferring and you're moving along. And, you know, again, you've played at 4 different schools in 4 years. And
remember the kid who was the kid, O'Bannon's kid for Grand Canyon was on 6.
On his 6. Yep.
We played in the NCAA tournament last year. And it was like, I'm sure there's a reason for some of the transfers. And, you know, I'm never going to, you know, just assume, but some of it has to be like, F it, I'm not playing. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Coach screwed me.
Well, yeah. And,
you know what I mean? But like 6 of them?
Yeah.
Like, how do your credits transfer? Like, I'm fascinated by that. Like,
and you know, it's funny you say that because the guard from Portland, Mike Meadows, right? So he was at Eastern, went to Portland when the coaching change happened with Shante, transferred down to LMU like in April, went from LMU to Cal. And then from Cal to St. Louis. So he's on the St. Louis roster right now. So that's 5 schools. 3 of them have happened in the last like 4 months.
Yeah.
And I don't know all that he's like, I will say this, you know, everybody puts out their little things with, you know, committed, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know, you know, if they got into school, didn't get into school, whatever. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, I mean, it's
crazy.
And hey, the kid didn't do anything wrong because we've allowed it. Like I talked about getting the adults back in charge.
Yes, you're right. We're not blaming the kid.
No.
Because it's like, if you have the opportunity to the grass is greener, then you can do it. But at some point it has to be like, dude, we got to pick a school and we got to pick a culture and get your degree and then move on, because it's got to be like mentally exhausting to constantly learn a new system, get new teammates, see if your credits transfer over, get a new girlfriend. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, holy God, it's just like a lot of work that has to happen. You know, so well, I appreciate that, you know, the thought process on the players. I agree with you. I think that 3 spot's going to be the most fascinating with Steele. And then obviously the 4 bigs is going to be fascinating. And there's kids that we haven't even mentioned. The Korean kid, June.
Yeah, June.
How do you say his name again?
June Suk-yo.
Yeah, June Suk-yo. Like when we talk about it on our broadcast too, I'm like, I am not trying to make fun of this name. I'm just trying to get through it. Yes, so if I ask again, I'm trying to say it correct.
For sure.
So I just want to make that clear that people are listening. I'm not laughing because it's a different name. I can't say it. I want to make sure I'm saying it right. And respect to the kid.
Yeah. And on him real quick, I think everybody needs to take a step back.
I think so too.
Right, because
100%.
we're in this thing like, the Korean freak, and you know, you see his highlights.
He had 18 points in the USA against USA. It's like, okay, that's cool, but
and he's still learning how to speak English.
Yep.
And
so Rui was the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so I think physically he looks the part, which is, I think, what makes you excited. You're like, man, look at his body. You know, he's just big, strong trunk and just and big up here too. And you think like, okay, hey, you know, if it clicks, I think they'll be able to get some good stuff out of him. But I think right now, you know, I mean, he's been on campus for what? I mean, he was second semester last year, and then he's been here for 6 or 7 weeks for this, you know, for this semester. So I don't know that he'll, I mean, I think he might get an opportunity or two because obviously he's not redshirting, and I think we'll see him play a little bit, but I don't think at this point we have expectations that he's going to.
I don't think so either.
And that doesn't make him a failure either. That just means he's, again, like we've been trying to talk about.
Rui
like
Berry
you have
played
exactly.
You know, and we're equating the same, not just because they're from an Asian country, just because the hard language barrier, you know, going from Japanese and Korean to English is different than like Spanish to English.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a different,
right,
it's a different deal. So that is a fair thing to kind of be like, hey man, this is going to take some time. Terminology is different over there. You got to learn our terminology. We're not changing, you know, it's one of those deals. We're not changing for you.
Right.
So, but, you know, so hopefully, you know, the expectations for him are tempered, because he did look fantastic in that FIBA I just mentioned, World Championships or whatever he played in. Obviously, if he's coming to Gonzaga, he's good enough. And then his body is like, man, this kid is big. Yep. And then also talking to some of the Stocktons, you know, they run the warehouse deal, and they're like, yeah, he's good. He can play. He's stronger than heck. They're like, I think he's just always trying to be so technical.
It's for you.
You know what I'm saying? It's like everything's got to be like perfect, and I'm built in the lab. It's like, no, man, just go make a play, and it's fine if you mess up, or just
I
make
was
the
going
right
to say
play.
that looks a little stiff almost.
Stiff,
like
yes.
he's almost thinking too much, right?
Yep.
It's like, okay,
Yep.
hey, if I was playing for my FIBA team,
Yeah,
like,
you're
I'm
just
the only
going
guy
to
who can
score,
score,
yeah.
so I'm just going to go and score it,
Yeah.
right? And now it's, oh, wait, okay, normally that worked. It didn't work that time because that guy's fast enough to get in front of me, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, wait, and I've got 3 coaches yelling at me, and I don't really know what they're saying. But
I know half of what they're saying.
So no, I'm excited to see if he's able to progress, but I don't think it's going to happen right now.
I agree.
The Perimeter will be right back after a word from our sponsor.
We love our house, but lately we've been feeling a little cramped.
So we talked to ICCU about a new home loan. The process was super quick, and we got a really great rate.
We start house hunting tomorrow.
Preferably something with a bigger garage.
Non-conference schedule. Like it, love it, hate it.
I like a lot of it.
I already know what some of the parts you don't. Yeah. Okay, so the Kentucky game I think is interesting in January, December,
February.
Wow, I was way off. I think the Maui tournament is fantastic. It goes Purdue, Syracuse, or Tennessee in the second round, and then most likely Kansas and was it Marquette?
Yep, I think
Marquette on the other side. Hopefully, we don't have to play Chaminade. That's no disrespect because it's almost like a throwaway game. You want 3 really good ones. The Purdue game is going to be fascinating. We got murdered by them last year, absolutely destroyed. Zach Edey's back. Their guard and their 2 freshman backcourt killed us last year. So that's going to be obviously we're going to be more on our radar. But they obviously assume they got better. So I'm curious to see the strategy against them. But then on the backside, win or lose, you're going to play Syracuse or Tennessee, which is great. Right. And Syracuse hasn't been as good as they have years past, but it's still a name. And usually they make they figure out a way to make the tournament. So it's like, we got a tournament win if you beat them. Right. So you're always happy about that. So I'm excited about that. San Diego State at home is good.
Yep. That's awesome.
What else do we have as far as my mind's going a little bit blank.
I know. So we'll go to Seattle to play UConn after we play. So we'll play UW and then we'll come home and then go back 6 days later, 5 days later. So we'll play UConn, obviously.
Battle in Seattle,
that's
basically.
Going to be a huge one.
It's not the same name anymore.
Same name, but
I'm glad we're doing that game again. I think it's the Climate Pledge one, right? So who did we get mollywopped? Was it last year? Alabama. Was it last year or 2 years ago? I remember sitting there calling that game. All right, well, take it away, Huddy. Hey, Mo, did they do anything good today? Nope. Take it away. It was like one of those.
Arena's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. We kept talking about, oh, man, it's really nice that they're, have the Climate Pledge and all that stuff, and God bless them. And they built a brand new facility. We're not even talking about the game. Like, did you go downstairs and see you could touch the screen and the temperature changes? Right. It's just like making up stuff. Like, it was such a blowout. But I like that we have a game back in the arena. I thought Kentucky last year was fantastic. I'm not excited about playing Pepperdine there, but I think that we need to do that every single year. It needs to be a tradition. I think we need to try to get, even if it's a quote unquote mid-level team or a mid-level team from a bigger conference would suffice.
Sure.
I think Fuey would be open to maybe play Wazoo there, but who's the home team? So who gets the tickets? Because that's always gets scary. Because remember we played them there years ago. We beat them, but it was like kind of scary because you're like, there's a lot of Wazoo fans that kind of want to beat us, and God bless them. I get it. Because we control the deal. Obviously their football team has been okay for the last 5-6 years. Yeah. But so you get into that game, you're like, oh, this crowd can turn on you real quick. Yeah, no,
exactly. So I'm with you. I do hope that I know it's Pepperdine and I know it's during, Christmas break, so the students won't be there. Yeah. But, kind of my thing for that is I hope that everybody in the community, that wants to see Gonzaga play
gets
tickets and goes. Because I think,
That's why I like
you want to
game.
move, me too, but I think you want to move past it. And look, that Kentucky game was electric. That's one of the, like, that was a fantastic environment. It was great. And it was Kentucky. So, you know, right. I mean, remember those tickets sold out and, you know, like this.
Yeah.
And I remember there was some, you know, some complaining because people felt like they should be able to get tickets, but, you know, the benefactors and the donors and all those people, you know, were able to buy tickets and there weren't a lot of opportunities. What I hope is that we can play a game against a team that isn't Kentucky and still sell that thing out and get people in there and be excited about it. Yeah. Because I think the worst thing that happen is, you know, you draw 4,000 in there because then we just won't do it again. I would think that to your point, you want to have that. I'd love to have that game once a year too, and give, you know, people in the community the opportunity, because those opportunities have dwindled a little bit here over the last
100%.
You know, 7 or 8 years, and for good reason. I mean, it's just it's a fact of life and a fact of growth. And if you're gonna win 30 a year and you're gonna make it to the Elite Eight and play for national championships,
we've talked about reseeding the building, but we can't go into that topic. So that's all I'm going to say about that, and that might go over some people's heads that are listening. But anyway.
But yeah, I do think it'd be great if we get a good crowd for that one, and give, you know, because the opportunity is going to be there for people to go and see that game.
Yeah, no. So I'm happy with the schedule, I guess. I mean,
and it's hard. And let's say this, Mo, too. When you look at some of the games that aren't the marquee, you know, top 25 matchups or whatever, when you look at it, when you're playing in these tournaments, right? When we go to Maui, the Maui hangover is real.
It is.
Right? You go over there and it's a 6 or 7 hour flight and you play those 3 games and then you fly home and
you're
for
tired.
4 days. You're there for 4 days.
Without the games. So you're kind of, I mean, obviously you're getting your guys moving around, but you're at the beach.
Yeah.
It's fun.
No, it is, right? And then, you know, if you come back and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to play Kentucky, you know, 2 days after we get back, you see it. I mean, it's, you know, so I think a few of those games, just kind of the way they set up, it's almost just I don't want to say necessary evil, but it's kind of part of the scheduling process. I mean, when you sit down and try to put together a schedule, you're looking at all those things. It's not, let's load up 7 top 25 games over a, you know, 3-week span. It's okay. Hey, if we're going to play these games in Maui and hopefully be, you know, successful and playing 3 really quality opponents, it might be too much to ask to come back and play another, you know, high level top 10 type of team. So we need to play a game to come back and get our legs, you know, going and figuring that stuff out.
There's a formula to it, to seeding. Like, people don't understand is, like, you know, Ken Palm and all those things and how many wins you have, like, matters. So, like, you can't, like you said, you can't just have all top 25 teams playing each other. And then on the backside, I know Fewy probably doesn't think about this, but, like, if you're an up and coming coach and you're trying to, you know, do well for your family financially, you probably put in there, if I get 20 wins, I get $100,000. Right. If I get to 23, I get 150. So, Sisters of the Poor, we'll play them. You want to play them twice? You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's part of it. Yep. You got to have games where your guys feel good, and then also, like, on the backside of that thought is, like, not a lot of teams will come to our building and play us. So I always have great respect for like a San Diego State that will do that.
Yep.
I guarantee we call and go, hey, well, let's do a home and home. Some teams are like, we'll play in Seattle. That counts as your home game, but then you play in our place. Like, that's not fair.
Right.
But it's just the reality of it. So sometimes when people kind of complain, and I get the complaints, I'm not completely on the, you know, university side on every decision.
Right.
Is teams won't come in and play us. So they're like, well, the home games, you know, there's not great non-conference home games. It's like, nobody wants to play us. What do we so we have to have a game.
Yeah. And then, you know, it's funny because I laugh with, and I laugh with Coach because he'll say that when, you know, when they're trying to put the scheduling together, and it's kind of like, you know, it's funny when they've just lost 3 starters, nobody returns our calls, but when they've got their top 8 scorers back, everybody calls and says, hey, they're willing to come and give it a go, right? And that's kind of part of it too, is figuring, you know, that stuff out.
Well, so to go quickly on, if we move to the Big 12, we will never have non-conference good home games, because why schedule? Right. It'll be,
you'd maybe get one like a Big 12 it will SEC challenge or something, right? But
it'll be straight Cupcake City. We'll almost do like where Lorenzo used to do at UW, do 12
Don't
home
leave
games
home until January.
Because you're going to go through the gauntlet. Like, I get his process, what he was thinking, but like, we're just going to stay in Seattle, heck Ed, and we'll be fine. And so we're going to play into the Pac-12, but that's what's going to happen. So, like, I think people need to understand that too, is obviously you'll have your big Christmas tournament or your Thanksgiving tournament, but you ain't playing nobody at home, because you got Kansas, you got Oklahoma State, just down to Arizona. So, the schedule's good. It's going to be fun. It's always a fun travel with WCC. I wish they'd go back to travel partners, but that's just a complaint that nobody cares about. It's like, here's a complaint department supporting the trash can. You know what I mean? Like, nobody gives a shit. Shut up, Adam. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I got it. You know, like, cool. But I wish I could stay in LA for 4 days instead of there and then back. You know, like it doesn't make sense financially for the smaller universities. It just doesn't. And that's a true. Like, what are we doing? But anyway, I digress.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, exactly. You get it. It's just like, okay. Do you got any other thoughts, Huddy? Share them openly. This is an open forum.
I'm trying to think. That's a good question. We touched on a bunch of stuff. I'm excited to get going. You know, and we talk about this quite a bit. Like, sometimes it's all like you go into a season and you know what you have. And you're like, okay, hey, we're loaded for bear. And this is the team we've got. And, man, we think we're going to compete for a national title, and we got a chance to do it. Sometimes for me, it's kind of fun to have the crew like we have coming in now, which is
I thought last year was one of the funner years because the games were closer.
Yep.
We didn't win by 40 every game. It's like, this is fun.
Yeah, right. And,
anyway,
and you
sorry
saw, and you saw guys make plays. And,
awesome.
You know, and it's I feel like this is, and I'm not making a grand statement, throw myself out there, but you know, this is a team that's going to be a lot better in March than it is in November, right? And so sometimes I think that's fun for as much as and if you're Coach Few and the coaching staff, it'd be nice to have Drew back for another year to just chuck it in there, and but I also think an opportunity to see guys grow and to see the team grow, and an opportunity to see these guys come in. Can Graham Ike come back after a couple years? That's a great storyline. He's a heck of a kid, like you said. You know him. I mean, the couple interactions I've had with him, it seems like a great kid.
He came out to my lake place randomly with my cousin who plays at Wyoming football, like I mentioned earlier. And hey, can Graham come? I was like, yeah, you have a buddy named Graham, and then he shows up. He's like, he's coming to Gonzaga. I was like, oh, hey, I felt a little bit embarrassed. I didn't know,
right?
But I was like, and then I kind of just like, oh yeah. But I just
that Graham.
Yeah, I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, I was just kind of all right. It's like the story I've told before, and you've heard this. Like, it was years ago. I was in where was I? I was in a gas station, and the guy goes, what about that Woolridge kid coming next year? I go, who the hell is that? And the look on this guy's face that I had no clue that they just signed like a high level, the best transfer in the country or whatever.
From North Texas, by the way.
But I had zero idea and zero care because it was August. Right? And I was like, who the hell is that? The new point guard at Gonzaga. Oh, and just the look of like disgust and like, you fraud, like, you fraud. That's what the look he was giving me. So yeah, that's how a little bit I felt for a second with Graham. Oh yeah, hey, cool, man, nice to meet you. My cousin says you're a really nice guy. Heard you can play. Then kept it moving. But anyway,
that's great. But yeah, right. I mean, that's going to be fun. To see Ryan Nembhard play is going to be a lot of fun. To see if Steele is able to make the jump and play, and to see how the group comes together. Like we talked about earlier, like Nolan, I think it's going to be great to see Nolan get this, this opportunity playing alongside a guy who's played a lot of minutes and figuring out. Like you said, maybe not have as much pressure. So I don't know, man, I think it's going to be fun just to see this group kind of come together and figure it out. Like you said, I mean, there seems like there are enough question marks at positions and how that's just all going to shake out. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I think you hit it all right on the head. Like, it's cool watching teams grow. And then this is a team that's, the expectations are still high, but it's not like we have a bunch of All-Americans and stuff. So like, they could be a lot better in March. And have the opportunity for the coaching staff to be like, hey, nobody believes in you. You pick second in the league, And when I've been asked a couple of times, like, is that a slight? I'm like, no, like St. Mary's has been good, and like nobody knows like who we are. So like that's not a slight, but you can use it as one.
Absolutely.
And if you're a player, you should use it as. But it's when I was like, that makes perfect sense. If I'm the coaches too, I'm like, well, I don't even know who they.
You don't know. But second, let's be honest. When you talk about the Wazoo fans want to beat Gonzaga, get sick of hearing about us. I mean, you think the WCC coaches and administrators aren't sick and tired of hearing about us? Yes. So it's like,
and now we're going to the big. Now we're flirting with the pretty girl at the dance.
Yeah, exactly.
So for the Big 12,
they're like, yeah, St. Mary's got some guys back. Yes, first place. I think that's so. But also, let's be honest. I mean, when they got Alex Dukas back, right? I mean, he decided to come back for a year, right? And then the Mahaney kid obviously played great. Yeah. The big Mitchell Saxon's back. I mean, it's not like they just picked St. Mary's just because. Yeah. I mean, they have some good players back. And to your point, we've got, I mean, at three positions, essentially. I mean, you're going to have new faces. Now, they've played at the Division I level, but you could easily see where the coaches were just like, okay, whatever. But, I don't think that was as much like, okay, serious slight to Gonzaga. It was just hey, we can not pick Gonzaga? Okay.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We're going to take them.
I agree. Well, Huddy, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man, great to see you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, what do we play, Friday?
Friday at 6 o'clock.
LC State. They got a Stockton on the team, so that'll be fun to call this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to get going. It's always fun to start getting back to reality a little bit and start drinking beers on the road.
Yeah, and that too.
That's what I really mean, everybody.
Yep. Right.
Get back with my buddy and start pounding beers and complaining about the world. It's just old man.
What's going on? Yep.
What the heck? So anyway, thank you to the sponsors, McGilvery Environmental, Idaho Central Credit Union. Sorry, I always have a hard time. And HDG Architecture. Thank you for sponsoring us. Thank you for listening. See you next time.